Greetings historians, welcome to Lore of the Dragon. Today, we're going to discuss a character that almost rivals the popularity of Spyro himself. Her return is something that many people would like to see, and in some cases have seen, even if only in Easter eggs. This is going to be a story of torment, of struggle, and of redemption. Her name is Cynder, the servant, the savior, and the terror of the skies. Much like the last video, I want everyone to remember that this is all technically not canon to the Spyro universe, as we're going to be going to the Legends and Skylanders continuity to explain the story of Cynder. Something else I will add on to this is headcanon, as for mainly the Legends timeline, there are parts of the lore that are left unclear. So for reference, I'm going to be using the creative head of the Legend of Spyro A New Beginning and the Eternal Nights headcanon to explain things that aren't exactly shown or presented in the games themselves. Again, not all of this is going to be official lore, but this is the closest we will ever get to a complete story of Cynder. To understand the story of Cynder in Legends, there is some context that has to be given, as without it, there might be some confusion as to who or what some of these things are, and why some events take place. In this case, we're actually going to be talking about Malefor, as everything he does puts the rest of the story in place. 1,000 years prior to the birth of Spyro, there was another purple dragon that went by the name of Malefor, one told to lead his world into the new age. He was brought up by a group of dragons known as the Elders, these individuals being the most skilled in their elements of all dragonkind. They would teach the young purple dragon of various elements a dragon could possess, as a trait purple dragons had was to harness all the elements, as opposed to a single element just like the rest of their species. However, Malefor would begin to grow a lust for power, and eventually would be exiled from society, left to fend for himself in the wilderness of the Dragon Realms. Malefor, now filled with nothing but contempt for those who exiled him, left the purpose of the purple dragon behind him, and embraced the darkness that engulfed his life. This would bring about the element of dark aether, a corrupted and distorted version of a purple dragon's primary element, aether. Much like the dark aether element, his body would begin to undergo changes, these being prominent in his appearance and his voice. However, his mind would remain untouched by this new element, letting him take control of the darkness, mastering it, and so, Malefor would call himself the Dark Master. With this newfound power and the hate of his race, he would build a fortress far from civilization, and recruit another species known as the Apes to act as his army against his own kind. With this, he would wage war against the rest of the dragons, bringing a new age to the realms, an age of war. From this fortress, he would gaze far into the horizon, to the world that he had just spun into chaos, and with the might of his power, the mountain he stood upon cracked, this forming what would be called the Mountain of Malefor, or by those filled with evil, the Well of Souls. Eventually, Malefor's spirit would be imprisoned in the well by the ancestors, while his essence, on the other hand, was trapped in a place known as Convexity, a dimension which lies between the Dragon Realms and the Dark Realms. During the Year of the Dragon, a bundle of eggs was hidden within the walls of the Dragon Temple, the gathering place for the guardians of the elements, whom protected the eggs from the forces of the Dark Master. Among these eggs would be one belonging to an unborn dragoness, of presumably the wind element, unaware of the fate that would soon befall her. A raid would be launched on the Dragon Temple by one of Malefor's generals, Gaul, the King of the Apes, his goal being to destroy any threat to his master, this coming in the form of a rumor of the next purple dragon, Spyro. When the apes raided the temple, the guardians did what they could to protect the eggs in their possession, but eventually, they were outnumbered by the forces of Malefor, and while the rest of the eggs were destroyed, one remained untouched, this one belonging to Cynder. Gaul would take her egg back with him, letting her hatch and live among them for a short amount of time. These moments of freedom would not last long, as, when she came of age, Gaul would perform a ritual to imbue Cynder with the powers of the Dark Master, tainting her scales black and leaving various markings all across her body. Along with these, she would be forced to undergo significant changes to her body, being forced to take the form of an adult dragon, despite only being a few years of age. This dark energy, coupled with her mutated body and a brainwashed loyalty to the Dark Master, made her a lethal weapon for the forces of Malefor. Gaul would then let Cynder loose on those who opposed him, eventually making her a general, only adding to her lethality. Swiftly, the Dragoness would take land from her foe, pushing them back to strongholds, and with each victory, Cynder began to earn a reputation, and from it spawned a name, the Terror of the Skies. The Dark Master's war would soon come to a head. The ones that once protected Cynder now fought in a losing battle against the Dragoness. Eventually, each one of them would be captured and their energy harnessed into energy crystals in an attempt to bring back Cynder's master from beyond. The Terror of the Skies would spread the Guardians throughout the realms, leaving her underlings to guard them. Some guarded by kings, others guarded coincidentally by tribal gods. However, the Fire Guardian, Ignitus, would manage to escape back to the Dragon Temple. However, in the end, the armies of the dragons were crushed under the weight of Malefor's new weapon. Hope seemed all but lost, vanishing from the once prospering dragon realms. Until one day, news of another purple dragon would arise, one born during the previous Year of the Dragon. Cynder, through an ape patrolling the swamplands of the dragon realms, learned of the existence of Spyro. She took to finding him immediately. Herself and her armies would begin the chase after the dragon, bringing them to Dante's Freezer, the holding place of Voltaire, guardian of electricity, Tall Plains, the home of the Atawa, and the holding place of the guardian of ice, Cyril, and then finally to Munitions Forge, where the guardian of earth was being held. When the new purple dragon freed Terrador, Cynder shot out from the lava pits, securing the crystal that harnessed the Earth Guardian's power. To protect the purple dragon, and possibly the fate of the world, the Earth Guardian took up arms against the Terror of the Skies. But this attempt would prove fruitless, as in his weakened state, or even at full strength, almost nothing was able to stop the corrupted Dragoness. This now left Cynder and the purple dragon alone, leaving Spyro defenseless against the towering monster. After the Guardian was dealt with, Cynder bolted toward the purple dragon, the mere sight of this being enough to send Spyro running in fear. Cynder inched closer to Spyro, almost being able to grab him out of the sky, until the Fire Guardian arrived. A battle between Ignitus and the Terror of the Skies ensued, each one clashing with each other as they fell out of the sky. However, it wasn't long until the Fire Guardian was beaten by Cynder and taken captive just like he was before. She took him to her tower fortress, Concurrent Skies, chaining him down at the tip of the spear, and extracting the energy out of him so that she would finally be able to free the Dark Master. Cynder would learn that once more, the Purple Dragon was on the move, this time being located in her own fortress, in an attempt to free Ignitus from her clutches. Just as Spyro reached Ignitus at the tip of the tower, he again met the Terror. A fight broke out between the two, this being a ploy to let the crystal, still being charged by the Guardian, to fill. The fight lasted just long enough for the crystal to charge, and given now that Cynder had what she wanted, the Dragoness fled to Convexity, with all the energy she needed to free Malefor. A final confrontation between Cynder and Spyro would commence, as the Purple Dragon followed the Terror of the Skies into Convexity to stop her from returning Malefor. But, as soon as Spyro arrived, Cynder already opened the gate for the Dark Master's essence to return, her mission finally being completed. With all the elements at Spyro's command, the two engaged in battle. This time, however, a new, more exotic element would burst forth from the small dragon: Aether. This burst of energy would not only subdue the Terror, but in a strange series of events, freed Cynder from Malefor, her body shrinking to nothing more but a small dragoness, just about the same age as Spyro himself, however, still tainted by the darkness that dictated her life for so long. The dimension around them started to collapse, and now the unconscious Cynder was being pulled toward the gateway, straight toward the same prison that held her previous master for centuries. A back and forth argument between Spyro and Sparks ensued, but despite the protests, the Purple Dragon decided to save Cynder, the three reaching the exit point just in time to save him. Eventually, Spyro made his way with Cynder and Sparks to the Dragon Temple. The Guardians now reunited once more, thanks to the effort of the Purple Dragon. When Cynder woke up from the battle, she was greeted by Spyro, Sparks, and the Guardians, Ignitus being the first one to speak, telling Cynder that he regretted failing to defend her and the rest of the eggs on the night of the raid, the rest of the Guardians quickly following suit. Unknown to her, however, before she had awakened, it was debated whether or not she would even be allowed to stay, with Ignitus himself standing for Cynder, even as some of the Guardians, Cyril mainly, wanted to reject keeping her in the temple. An event when the celestial moons Zella and Adrano would eclipse each other was drawing near, causing what was called the Night of Eternal Darkness, where the deceased beings of the dark would once more be able to come back to the Dragon Realms through the Well of Souls, and those who maintained some evil in their soul would also be drawn to the well, unable to resist its temptation. In the weeks following, Cynder and Spyro would train together, using an arena in the temple, one that Spyro used to master his elements when Cynder was still under the control of Malefor. In one instance, Cynder wanted to show Spyro how it worked, but without thinking of the consequences, conjured Gull, almost being severely hurt in the process. And Spyro would be the only thing standing in the way of this happening, though all this would only act as a way to distract her from the torment that she had once caused. And one night, it would come to a head. While most of everyone was asleep, Cynder snuck out through the temple gardens, hoping that she wouldn't be spotted by the rest. However, Sparx would see her attempt and told Spyro about it, with the Purple Dragon's response being to find her immediately, as the night during this time was dangerous for those opposed to the Dark Master, even in the surrounding area around the temple. Eventually, Spyro caught up to Cynder just outside the temple, pleading for her not to go and return to the temple. But Cynder, feeling remorse, told Spyro that she had to find her own path in this world. And once she had said this, she ran off into the distance, leaving Spyro and the temple behind. As she explored the Dragon Realms, she was captured by a group of scavengers, who used various creatures from across the realms in a gladiatorial arena. Once they had found her, they figured out soon who she was, and put her in the pits of a place called Falmouth to fight for their entertainment. Their expectations kept high for her previous reputation as the terror of the skies. Unknown to her, Spyro was chasing after her, hoping to bring her back to the temple, only to be captured by the scavengers himself. In a turn of fate, however, the two young dragons would be put against each other. But the Dragoness had a different plan in mind. She proposed that she and Spyro would fight, but fake it to buy time so that they could formulate a plan so that they could escape. But as they were just about to begin, the armies of Gull swept into the arena, taking Cynder captive and bringing her back to the Well of Souls, and giving her an ultimatum: rejoin Malefor as a servant once more, or be destroyed by his wrath. The Purple Dragon once more would go to rescue Cynder from the grasp of Malefor, following the ape forces all the way to the Well of Souls, right as the Night of Eternal Darkness was upon the Dragon Realms. As the apes gazed down to Spyro, Gull ordered Cynder to attack him. The dragon seemed to do this without hesitation. Once more the two would prepare to fight, and much like the last time, Cynder would give a plan to Spyro, signaling to him what she intended to do. The two circled around, and when the time came to strike, Cynder shot toward Gull, only to be caught midair and thrown into a nearby wall, the force of the impact rendering her unconscious. When she came to, Cynder found that Spyro was hovering in a purple beam. However, something seemed off about the Purple Dragon. His scales were jet black, and his eyes glowed an eerie white. He had been tainted by the darkness. Cynder and Sparx stared up in fear at Spyro, the Purple Dragon unable to control the darkness entering his body. But before it could overtake him, Cynder leapt forward into Spyro, releasing him from its influence. The mountain of Malefor started to crumble around them, rubble collapsing onto the entrance, trapping them inside the ancient structure. Before they were crushed underneath the weight of the rocks, Spyro used an element recently acquired by him, Dragon Time, using its fury to shield them from what might have surely been the end of them, allowing the three to continue their fight another day. Around them, the crystal shattered, the limp bodies of the dragons and dragonfly falling to the ground. Around their necks were placed snake-like necklaces, binding the two dragons together with an almost unbreakable green chain. They were taken from the ruins of the Well of Souls to a place known as the Catacombs, so that they could be used as tribute to a golem, one of the large and monstrous beasts of the realms. However, Sparx was left behind, only to be picked up by a cloaked figure. Cynder woke up to the sound of drums, finding that they were no longer in the ruins, and immediately went to wake up Spyro. As the Dragoness walked away from the place where she had awakened, she found that something was hindering her escape, blaming Spyro on holding her back. However, the two soon found that they had been bound to a plate, stopping them from escaping. Spyro pieced together that with this chain locking them together, that they had to work together in unison with each other, telling Cynder to follow his lead. The Dragoness, however, questioned this and why the purple dragon should be the one to lead. Her answer would come in the form of a golem's hand, almost crushing them where they stood. The only thing preventing that being Spyro and Cynder taking flight just before their demise. From out of nowhere, an arrow flew through the air, hitting the golem in the eye and scaring it away. Something strange happened to the necklaces, as they started to fizzle out of sight, until finally they seemingly became invisible, only acting if Spyro and Cynder got too far away from each other. They then reunited with Sparks, along with meeting someone else, a cheetah by the name of Hunter, the one who helped drive away the threat. It was through Hunter that they learned Ignitus had sent him to find both of them, and learned that it had been 3 years since they had gone missing. This news came as a shock to Spyro, who couldn't believe the time they had been in slumber. They followed the cheetahs through the caves, finding this as a large green crystal, this letting Cynder know of the new elements under her command: poison, fear, wind, shadow, and aether, each one derived from her past and the corruption by the Dark Master. They each continued on, all the while being chased by the golem, angered by the injuries it had sustained. Hunter explained that Ignitus was waiting for them in a place known as Warfang, the Dragon City, and that he would lead the three there through the forest. As they settled for the night, Cynder and Spyro experimented with the chain. The purple dragon even considered twisting it as an option to get it off. However, a frustrated Cynder commented how one does not simply twist magic. As they settled in the camp for the night, the cheetah told them what had happened during their absence. Spyro, now realizing that Malifaux had finally escaped his prison, and now waged war in the realms just as he did hundreds of years ago. Only to add to this, on the horizon, suspended over a volcano, sat the ruins of a building, and Hunter explained that this was the Temple of Warfang, Malifaux's objective not to only retake his throne from the exile he had been given, but to show his power to all those who opposed him. From the darkness, a green light flew through the air, striking Cynder in the head and knocking her out. Another would come and do the same to Spyro, and then to the rest of them, the four of them waking up during the day, finding themselves in a village. Cynder, once again, was already up when Spyro came to, finding that they had been tethered to a large pillar, the green chain lighting up due to the tension placed on it. They were approached by 3 more cheetahs, one with a red cloak walking toward Hunter. This cheetah that walked up to Hunter was none other than the chief of his village, Prowess. He questioned why Hunter had helped the dragons, the ones who seemingly started the war. Hunter retorting that Spyro and Cynder were more than likely their last hope against Malifaux. Not convinced, as given what he had heard about the Dark Master when he was young, and the reputation of Cynder, trust was not something that he put in the once noble species. Before anything more could be said, the creatures that had brought the dragons from the Well of Souls, now being called gremlins, started attacking the village. As the cheetahs prepared to defend their homes, Spyro pleaded to Prowess to let them help, to which the chief replied that they were more than capable of defending their homes themselves. Cynder explained that there was no time to be stubborn, and with the forces of the Dark Master approaching, the chief decided that the Dragoness was right, and let both dragons help in the defense of the village alongside them. After the fighting had ended, the chief assembled the village population to see what casualties they had taken, only finding one missing, a cheetah by the name of Meadow. With the threat of the gremlins in the Valley of Avalor, Prowess rejected all proposals to search for their missing comrade, but Spyro proposed that he would find him and bring him back himself, asking for Hunter to be freed so that he might help them. The chief said that he would permit him to go, but Hunter would stay in the village, and only if they found Meadow would he reconsider letting Hunter go with them. Spyro, Cynder, and Sparks set out to find the lost cheetah, finding him attached to a cave wall guarded by gremlins. After fighting them off, the dragons freed Meadow. Their plan to get him back, however, growing more complicated, with the cheetah now unable to use one of his legs. Meadow, however, instructed them how they might be able to fix this problem, both by finding a raft at the end of the valley and by going to the mountains surrounding the valley, finding a hermit that possessed a key. The 3 of them found their way over to where the hermit resided, finding skeleton-like creatures had also infested the area of the valley. Fighting them off just as they did the ones before, they ran into the hermit, but unlike the others, this cheetah, however, would immediately set his gaze to Cynder and started to recall who she was, asking why she had returned to the valley. The old cheetah recalled who she was, and to him, who she always would be. He mocked the Dragoness, and explained that the skeletons that they had fought before were what remained of the apes after Malefor's return. That they, as a result of their greed and lust for vengeance instead of loyalty to the Dark Master, have been cursed to an existence of living in the shadows. The hermit explained that, however far Cynder ran, much like the apes before her, she cannot escape her past, or the master that she once served. Before they grabbed the key, Spyro and Cynder walked away from the hermit, with Cynder having enough of how he spoke to Cynder, and the Dragoness not desiring to revisit her past. It was only when Sparks had flown up from behind them and revealed the key that they had remembered that they almost forgot about getting it, nearly making the achievement of finding the hermit null and void. Cynder, Spyro, and Sparks, with the key in their possession, were able to move the raft, using it to bring Meadow back to the village, and finally having Hunter be let free, allowing the cheetah to guide them to Warfang, where Ignitus waited for them. When they arrived in the city, Malefor's forces were besieging it, the army of Warfang scrambling to their home's defense. Spyro and Cynder both fought alongside the army, fending off multiple waves of enemies trying to breach the walls of the city. Again, they would meet the golem. This time, however, they would fight it, and inside the city. And eventually, with the efforts of Spyro and Cynder, it was Warfang where it would meet its end. After the fighting had ceased, the dragons and Sparks made their way to the city's interior, finally reuniting them with the Guardians. When Cynder and Spyro had their reunion with Ignitus, it was pointed out by the Dragoness that they still had a green chain that bound her and Spyro together. And when the fact that it could not be taken off was revealed to them, her response was almost immediate shock, finding that she was still unable to choose her own path. However, the Fire Guardian told not only the Dragoness, but Spyro as well, that they had managed to complete impossible feats, and that they should view it not as a hindrance, but as a representation of their intertwined fates. The two dragons would stare a glance, and the rest of them would spend the day figuring out their next move. During the night, Malefor would bring up crystals of dark energy, using them to project an image to the people of Warfang, an image of what he planned to do. He intended to use what was called the Destroyer, a ginormous golem that could create a massive ring of fire, and when completed, it would send an inferno across the planet, and eventually destroy it, wiping out everything in its path in what was called the Belt of Fire. With this new information having been given to them, they now knew what they needed to do. Use the underground tunnels of Warfang to sneak up on the Destroyer, and stop it before it completed its ring. As they approached the ancient door to Old Warfang, they were informed that the doors were only intended to be used as an exit, and that they had to be opened from the inside. With the two dragons and Sparks being the only ones who could fit inside, they flew through a crack in the wall, and opened the door for the others. Spyro and Cynder now find themselves on the other side of the tunnel, staring toward the Destroyer over the horizon. As they figure out a way to slow it down, Cynder realized the position the Destroyer put itself in. She found that not only had the beast put itself in the middle of a valley, but in direct line of a dam, and if they could let all that water flow through the valley, they could possibly slow it down long enough to stop it entirely. The purple dragon complimented the Dragoness, Cynder herself mentioning that she had her moments of genius. Cynder, Spyro, and Sparks went to the dam, being intercepted by the Dark Master's forces, but despite this, they were able to destroy the structure, letting the valley overflow, and turning the lower half of the Destroyer to rock. The three charged for the molten creature, fighting their way up around its body, trying to destroy dark crystals that fueled its movement. They destroyed each one, and were given what they thought was a victory, until another dark gem lit to life, giving the Destroyer enough strength to break free from its solidified lower half, and completing its ring of annihilation. A massive fire shrouded Malefor's throne. With time running short, and defeat just around the corner, their options were running short, and Ignitus then ordered all to take shelter, hoping that they could ride out what was soon to come. Then he proposed that he could bring the purple dragon and Cynder across to stop Malefor once and for all. As they got prepared to leave, Sparks, as was the usual, intended to go with them. Spyro saying, however, he would more than likely meet his demise if he were ever to go into the Ring of Fire, despite the protection that he might have been given. With that news, the Dragonfly told Cynder that she had to watch over Spyro, to make sure that he didn't get himself into any trouble. Cynder, Spyro, and Ignitus now walked across the Belt of Fire, the Guardian now using what energy he had to shield them from the blistering heat. However, Ignitus felt himself starting to weaken, and that soon, he might not be able to defend the two young dragons from the flames. When Ignitus announced this, and that he had to sacrifice himself so that they could reach the other side, Spyro was in immediate protest, claiming that they could still get across together. The Fire Guardian then told the both of them, however, since they had been eggs, he had failed them, how even with his best efforts, he couldn't truly protect Cynder and Spyro from this war, and that now he finally wanted to do something right for them. The two young dragons were then thrown across the fiery abyss, now one step closer to vanquishing Malifaux, though a price had been paid. Cynder then witnessed Spyro once again lose control of himself, the rage and sadness building inside of him until finally Spyro's dark form took control over his body. And then he took flight, trying to move his way back into the fire, the purple dragon not wanting to believe that now Ignitus was gone. But as Cynder explained that there was nothing that they could do for the late Fire Guardian, darkness exited his body. Spyro floated back to the ground, and Cynder attempted to comfort him from the grief, but reminded him that they still had to push forward. Through the burned lands, they fought their way through gremlins and beasts conjured by Malifaux, finding their way to the broken Warfang Temple. And finally, after the fighting, after the loss, they were face to face with the monster that started this all. They were standing before the Dark Master. As both Cynder and Spyro braced themselves for a fight, Malifaux welcomed them as guests, and even complimented them on their determination, claiming that in regards to things other than their color, him and Spyro had a lot in common, more than a young purple dragon wanted to hear. The Dragoness warned Spyro not to listen to a word the Dark Master said, but then the ancient dragon turned to Cynder, taking her personally for tricking Spyro into helping releasing him. Malifaux took the green chains off, the necklaces almost exploding in a flurry of sparks, after which he continued explaining how Spyro had been used by Cynder, and that even when the Dragoness thought she was free from her shackles, she never could run from who she once was. Cynder was left questioning what was truth and what was not, the words of the Dark Master making her doubt that she ever really was in control, or even free. Just then, a dark energy took over her body, her scales fading to a pure black and her eyes glowing white. Once again, Cynder had been taken as a puppet, leaving her once more a slave to another power. Malifaux ordered her to attack Spyro, the purple dragon being left in shock as to what happened to his friend. And when the Dark Cynder asked him why he wouldn't defend himself, he told her that once she had been taken, there was nothing else for him to protect. The Dragoness had a choice: to succumb to the master that defined her for so long, or to grant herself freedom and give Spyro something to fight for. The darkness shrouding Cynder dispersed, her appearance returned to normal, and now the two stood defiantly against the Dark Master. The Dark Master roared in anger, placing the chain back on the two, claiming that now they would share the same fate, and took to the skies. With nowhere to hide, and now facing the might equivalent to two purple dragons, where the last fight of the war would truly begin. Above the ruins of the temple, Spyro and Cynder together fought against the fallen purple dragon. However, the destroyer had now completed its task, and the cleansing had begun. With nothing more to do, Spyro and Cynder now focused fully on taking down Malifaux. The temple started falling from where it rested in the sky, careening down toward the volcano below. Eventually, Cynder and Spyro were able to drive Malifaux to the core. With nowhere to hide, and now facing the might equivalent to two purple dragons, Malifaux shot a beam of dark aether toward the two young dragons, Spyro and Cynder countering with beams of their very own. Even with all the power Malifaux had, his strength started to falter, and with the combined power of the new purple dragon, and now his liberated servant, Malifaux was overcome. His beam failed, and Malifaux fell to the ground. He got up once more, confused as to how this was possible, but before he could fight back, just as his days of old, the ancestors came, surrounding the Dark Master, and they imprisoned him in the core, sealing him away once and for all. The necklaces appeared until for one last time, they seemingly disappeared. Despite their victory over the Dark Master, the work had been done, and the world started to break apart around them. As they landed on the core itself, Cynder asked for forgiveness from Spyro for everything that she had done, Spyro reassuring her that there was nothing that she had to be sorry for, and that everything was over. The spirit of Ignitus appeared behind Spyro, the words that he told the young dragon giving him enough strength and the knowledge to know what had to be done. He told Cynder to flee while she could. However, the Dragoness told Spyro to come with her, that he didn't have to sacrifice himself, her hope being that maybe in some way they could survive this event together. The Purple Dragon protested, saying that there was nowhere to go, and that in some way he felt that this is what he was meant to do. Cynder gave him a nod, telling him that she was with him till the end, and as Spyro lifted himself into the air, as he began his attempt to save everyone, Cynder whispered 3 simple words. The world had been pulled back together, and the Dark Master finally defeated. However, in a far-off place known as the White Isle, a dragon known as the Chronicler observed a book of the dragon's deceased, finding that Spyro and Cynder curiously weren't in it. From behind him came Ignitus. As in the Fire Guardian's death, he had been chosen to take up the title Chronicler for the new age. The old dragon faded, and as Ignitus donned the attire of the Chronicler, he used his newfound power to continue where the old one left off, where he found Spyro and Cynder, flying peacefully in the skies, their destinies still entangled, but finally free from war. That's going to do it for part 1 of Cynder's story. Next week we should have the rest of the story with Skylanders and Skylanders Academy out. Sorry for those that wanted a complete story in one video, but for the sake of everyone, I wanted to make sure this video wasn't going to be an hour long. Anyway, if you made it to the end, thank you for sticking around, and thanks to all who checked out and shared the Ember and Flame video, and decided to stick around even after that. Anyway, I'll go ahead and hopefully see you guys next week with Cynder and Skylanders Academy. Hope you have a good one.